So good morning, everyone. Welcome to lecture 20 of Grid and Cloud Computing. So in this lecture, we will discuss about the parallel and distributed programming paradigm. And this topic will cover in two classes, today's class and the next class, in which I will tell you about the MapReduce programming, which you can implement in your lab class. So before going to the programming aspect, let me again tell you about parallel distributed systems. What do you mean by a parallel system? What do you mean by a distributed system? And what is a combined one? That is parallel and distributed system that we will revisit. After that, we will go for the programming, especially the MapReduce programming, how it works with an example. I am going to explain how you can write the program or what kind of program you can solve in MapReduce. So if you want to go to the definition of parallel distributed program, you can say parallel programs running on a set of computing engine, or you can say distributed computing system. So you can see here these two words, one is parallel, another is distributed. As the name suggests, parallel means two work you are doing simultaneously. Let X work you are executing in one engine, Y work you are working in another, Y work is running in another engine. So these resources where you are running your work, that is called the computing engine or resources or computer system or data center or virtual machine or physical machine, right? So in order to make the computing engine as busy as possible, what you have to do, you have to write the parallel program, right? If it is a sequential program, it will not work, right? If you write a parallel program, then only it will work. For example, I have two processors. I have assigned X to the first processor, Y to the second processor. For example, X is nothing but, right? I am writing A is equal to A plus 1 is our X, right? Y is nothing but B is equal to B plus 1, right? If you see these two, first statement is nowhere related to the second statement. First statement is incrementing the value of A. Second statement is incrementing the value of Y. So they are not related to each other, right? So what you can do, if you have a two processor system, then in the first processor you can assign X, second processor you can assign Y. Okay, that's why in order to define the parallel program, first you have to deal with the parallel distributed program. You have to focus on parallelism. How you can write a parallel program such that that can be run in a set of computing engine, right? You may have 1,000 processors, but if you will not write a parallel program, it is very difficult to make all the processor or all the computing engine busy throughout this process, right? Or you can say it is also you can define as a distributed computing system. In distributed computing system, what happens? Not necessary they are present nearby, but they are distributed in all over the world, right? One resource may be available, one data center may be available in Singapore, another data center may be available in Japan, another in US, another in UK. Okay, but combinedly they are solving a particular problem, right? In that case, you require distributed computing system. So these are the two fundamental terms. First is one is called as your distributed computing system. Second one is called parallel system. Okay, or you can see a parallel program running on a distributed computing system. So what happened? The program is again parallel. Okay, so you have written a program like this. So what you have done? X work you have assigned to one computer system. Y work is given to another computer system. In this case, what happened? The location of this particular system and this system, they are different. But in parallel system, in a single computer, you have multiple cores that can be visualized as a parallel system. But in this case, what happened? the processors who are executing X and Y, they may not present in the same place or same location, right? So the very well known computer cluster, right? We have already discussed about the cluster computing, computer cluster, or you have connected various workstation into network, or you can say in your lab, your 30 systems you have connected through a network. So that can be treated as a distributed computing system. Or one lab is coordinating with another lab, okay, or 5-6 labs are sharing their resources. So at that time we call it a distributed computing system, right? That's why if you define a distributed computing system, we can say it is a set of computational engine, like we define parallel programming a set of computational engines connected via a network to achieve a common goal of running a job or application. Common goal means all the systems are working together to achieve a particular goal, or to run a particular application, or to run a real life application. So all need to contribute in order to achieve the goal, right? So here, as I mentioned, you can use the computer cluster or network of workstations in order to share the resources among various computing engines, right? Now, if you go for parallel computing, so this parallel computing may use either the distributed one or the non-distributed computing system, such as multiprocessor system. In distributed system also you can achieve the parallelism, right? It is not necessary that the parallel system and distributed systems are completely different. Okay. The thing is that parallel systems are close to each other. They may be present in a single location, just like supercomputer case, you can say. Distributed system, the computing engines are not located in a single place. So both are having their own advantages and disadvantages. Okay. Whenever we are seeing the things is non-distributed means they are located in the same place. We are talking about the multiprocessor system. Like a single computer system may have multiple processor or multiple core. So that can be treated as a non-distributed system, right? Or sometimes parallel computing you can achieve if the computers are segregated in all over the world. There also we can achieve parallelism. So where we say as the computers are not located in the same place, we call that one as distributed system. Now, what is our objective? Our objective is to run a parallel program into these systems. You go for parallel computing system or for distributed computing system, you have to write a parallel program because you have a set of computing engine. You have a set of resources. As you have a set of resources, you are bound to write a parallel program. That's why running a parallel program on a distributed system has several advantages, not only for the user, but also for the distributed system. So why it is how it is beneficial to user? User work can be solved in a fraction of second, right? Because you have a lot of computing engine. Again, if you see the distributed computing system point of view, all the resources are getting their job, so they are properly utilized. So both sides you are having a lot of advantages. So if you see in the user perspective end, from the user perspective, if you want to see, it decreases the application response time. Okay, earlier what happened? The response time is more. If parallelism is not there, response time is more because you have to execute X, this instruction, then only you are executing Y. But by the help of this system, you can execute X and Y parallel. That's why it is saying it decreases application response time. Okay, but if you see in the angle of a distributed system, what we can say? In distributed computing system point of view, it increases the throughput, the performance of the system is increased, and their resource utilization is also increased. You have a set of computing engine, but if nobody is going to use that computing engines, then what happens? They are idle. If they are idle, they are also drawing the power, right? So in the distributed point of view, you have to see that how you will get some application or a subtask or a task or a job, okay, in order to increase the utilization of the machine, right? So this is a complete difference between the parallel system and distributed system. If you go for parallel system, in context to the memory, we call it a tightly coupled system. If two, if a system is tightly coupled, for example, you assume that in your computer you have two cores, they are tightly coupled. Tightly coupled means the performance of the one core will affect the performance of the second core. Suppose the system is crashed, then what happens? First core is crashed, second core is also crashed. So tightly coupled says that if something happens to one, it will affect to all. Another thing is, as they are present in the same system, so they can use the shared memory. Shared memory means just like a common memory is there that is used by both the processors. Right? That is called as your parallel system in context of memory. But whenever we are coming to the distributed system, they are present in various places. As they are present in various places, they are loosely coupled system. What do you mean by loosely coupled system? Loosely coupled system means if a system is crashed, then it will not affect to other system. Okay. So in this case, what happened? They have distributed memory instead of your shared memory. Okay. This is the comparison of parallel system with the distributed system in context of memory. Come to control. As it is present in the same location or same computer system or same workstation or same server, okay, there is a global clock control. Okay, you can assign the first work here. Okay, you can assign the second work here, and you can monitor these works because all the things are available at a glance. But distributed system, there is no global clock, right? If you see also the timing of each and every computer system is different. Just a non-technical example you can take that suppose I will tell what is the time now. Many people will say that the time is 9:01, somebody will say 9:02, somebody say 9:05. What is the reason? The main reason is that you have no global clock control. Okay, there is no global clock control. That's why there is no global control. So you monitoring the system is a little bit difficult. They have different clock, right? If you come to process interconnections, parallel system can run the work terabytes per second. The big works can be done by the help of parallel system. But distributed system is an order of your GBPS, gigabits per second, right? And the main focus, if you see for a parallel system, is that the performance. Okay, or if you go for the scientific computing, if you want to run the scientific application in, let's say, in supercomputer, so definitely you will get good performance. But you have to ensure that all the things will be available in that particular site. Cooling should be available, resources should be available, climate should be good, okay? Or you can say in the data center, people's who are working, they are available, everything should be available. Otherwise, if there is some natural calamity will happen, then you cannot achieve a good performance. Now come to the distributed system. Here the performance we want to achieve in terms of cost and scalability. We'll see how we can minimize the cost. Scalability says that as many as resources you can add into your system. As many as resources possible you can include in your system. Right? Suppose today you require 10 resources, it is available. Tomorrow you require 20 resources, it is available. So that flexibility is there in the distributed system, but not in the parallel system. That's why if you go for the advanced computing, they are more or less distributed system. Although there is a parallelism is there in the distributed system, but they are relying on the distributed system because the things will be available all over the world, not in a particular location. Reliability is an important factor, right? Reliability should be as maximum as possible. And the main purpose of a distributed system is to share resources, okay, or share the computing engines, okay, to solve a scientific or engineering application. That is the main purpose of the distributed system. So in this way, you can distinguish the parallel system with distributed system. An important note is that don't think that distributed systems cannot be parallelized. Distributed system also having parallelism, but they are not located in the same place. Parallel system, they are located in the same place, or that is called a multiprocessor system. Now, if you want to see the parallel computing or programming paradigm, the system issues for running a typical parallel program in either a parallel and distributed manner may contain these things. I want to run a parallel program into the parallel distributed system. Okay, so I may face various issues. You want to run a system, a program into any system, so you may face various types of issues. There may the issues with respect to the computational power, issues with respect to how you are going to execute it and which unit is going to execute which part. So there are a lot of issues are there that we have to discuss here. The very first one issue you can face, that is called as partitioning. You have written a parallel program, right? Just like you have written a C program or C++ program. Your objective is here to partition the program into small chunks. How you are going to do. Okay, and this is applicable. This partitioning is not applicable for computation. It is also applicable for data. If it is a computational intensive work, computational intensive means more time you are giving to computation, not to the communication. So there also partitioning is the important part. Or you may go for the data intensive applications where you are giving emphasis more to the data transfer. Okay, so both cases the partitioning plays a major issue. How to partition a application into small chunks so that that can be executed in the computational engine. Very first one issue. Second one, computational partitioning. So I told you the partitioning may be two types. One is computational partitioning or it may be data partitioning. In computational partitioning, what is our job? This splits a given job or a program into smaller tasks. A program is given to you, like I told you, you have written a C program. What you want to divide the program into smaller tasks. If you divide in the smaller tasks, then only you can distribute the small tasks to a particular computational resource. Okay, or you can say, upon identifying the parallelism in the structure of the program, it can be divided into parts to be run on different workers. Different worker means first one is called as your master node. First one is called as your master node, and master node monitors various workers. Okay, W1, W2, let's say Wn. So master, what it is doing? It is partitioning the work and assigning to various workers. So whenever the worker is executing that work, so make sure that the sufficient resources should be available or sufficient components that are required for execution is available. And once the work is over, they will return the result to the master. Okay. So different parts may process different data or a copy of the same data. So sometimes what happens, in order to provide fault tolerance, I am assigning the same work to W1 and same work to W2 by assuming that one of them is going to give me the result. That's why it is saying they may process the different data. Let's say data 1 I have assigned to W1 and data 1 I also assigned to W2. But W3 I assign data to or WN I have assigned data 5, something like that. So they may process different data if you are ensured that there is no computing engine is going to fail, or they may deal with the same copy of the data. By assuming that one system is crashed, then other worker node will return the result. Right? Coming to data partitioning also what we are doing in computational partitioning. You are dividing a program, right? Here, this splits the input or intermediate data into smaller pieces. The same thing you are doing. Here you are dealing with the data, there you are dealing with the computational program. Right? So upon identification of the parallelism in the input data, it can be divided into pieces. Why you are dividing into the pieces? Because you want to execute them into different workers. Okay. So similarly, here also data pieces may be processed by different part of the program or the copy of the same program. So both are looking like the same thing, but one is dealing with the computational one, another is dealing with the data one. Or in the job perspective, we are saying computational intensive job. In the second case, we are saying data intensive job. So these three are the main issues. Other issues are also there, we are going to discuss, but partitioning plays an important role, because if you cannot partition a program into small chunks or small tasks, then what is the use of a set of computation engine, right? Now come to mapping. What mapping is saying? Mapping assigns the smaller parts of a program, or you can say smaller pieces of data, to underlying resources. So if it is a computational partitioning, you are partitioning into program, smaller parts of the program. If it is a data partitioning, you are going for smaller pieces of data to underlying resources. Right? You have a set of resources, that is set of worker nodes, and you want to assign these things into the worker nodes. Okay, whether it is a data partitioning or a computational partitioning, you have to do the mapping with your resources, because resources is going to execute your application. The next major issue is called as synchronization. So it is saying, because different workers may perform different tasks. Different worker may perform different tasks, or they may do the same task also. So the very first is that they should be synchronized. If it is a distributed system, synchronization plays an important role, because they are not present in the same location. They are present in all over the world. Right? So there, if you see, synchronization, coordination among the worker is necessary. If you are not dealing with this synchronization and coordination properly, it will lead to the race condition. What is race condition? Race condition means multiple access to the shared resources. One worker is accessing one shared resources, at the same time other workers are also accessing the same shared resources. If such a condition happens, then race condition will occur. Right? That's why sometimes what happens, one worker is waiting for the result that should be given by another worker. So you have to ensure that that worker is providing that result so that it can execute. Another issue is there, data dependency among different workers is properly managed. What we discussed, right? Suppose I will say that once you complete A, then only you can see B. So there is a data dependency. B cannot start until unless A is completed. So what we can say here, the data dependency among different workers should be properly managed. If it is not managed, then you may face some problem. One worker may be idle, another worker is not giving the work. That's why one worker is completely idle. The next one is called as your communication. So communication is always triggered when intermediate data is sent to the worker. So the master node is going to give the work to the worker node, or a worker node is giving the work to another worker node. So what we are doing, we are transferring the data from one unit to another unit. So when the intermediate data is sent to the worker, communication plays an important role. So we should not spend much time in the communication. We have to focus on how efficiently the data should be available so that the worker node can execute for that particular work. If communication time is more, then what is the purpose of going for distributed system, right? The very most important part is called as your scheduling. So scheduling says for a job or a program or a application, when the number of computational parts, or we call it a task, or data pieces, okay, varying up based upon the data partitioning or based upon the computational partitioning, is more than the number of workers. Suppose you can see you have 5 workers, but you have 15 works. What happens? If 15 works are there and 15 workers are there, then there is no issue. You can assign one work to one worker. But if number of computational resources, okay, is less and number of computational tasks is more, then what happens? You need a scheduler. The scheduler, what it will do? This scheduler selects a sequence of tasks or data pieces to be assigned to the worker. So what happens if you see in this scenario, you can say if there are 5 workers are there and you have 15 works, you can assign 3 works per worker. Right? That's why a scheduler is required, because scheduler will determine. Suppose these works are called as these workers are W1 to W5, and you have task 1 to task 15. Okay. So let us assume that task 1, task 5, and task 12 is assigned to W1. So in a proper order, you are going to assign these tasks to the worker. One order may be T1, T5, T12. Another order may be T5, T1, T12. Another order may be T12, T5, T1. That is called the sequence of tasks or data pieces that you are going to assign to the worker. That is very much important. So here, if you see 2 components, one is called as a resource allocator, another is called as scheduler. What resource allocator is doing? Resource allocator performs the actual mapping of computation in case of computational partitioning or data pieces in case of data partitioning to workers. While scheduler, what is the main work of scheduler? Scheduler only picks the next part from the queue of an unassigned task. So these tasks are present in a queue. Suppose T12 is present first. So what scheduler is doing? And it is unassigned. This task 12 is unassigned. So T12 is picked from queue. Okay. T12 is picked from the queue because it is an unassigned task. And based on a set of rules or the scheduling policy, we want to disperse to a particular worker. That's why scheduling is a very important issue for running a typical parallel program. Okay. So let us take a poll, then we'll continue. So you have 1 minute, please answer. Please read the question carefully before answering. So you have last 5 seconds. What is the correct answer? Can anybody say? Distributed system is loosely coupled system. It is not a tightly coupled system. Okay, it is a loosely coupled system. Right? Parallel systems are tightly coupled system. Okay. Now let us continue the discussion. Let us go for the main motivation why we need programming paradigm. So if you go for parallel distributed programming, okay, so it models. So these models, if you go for parallel programming or you go for the distributed programming, these models aim to provide user with an abstraction layer to hide the implementation details of the data flow. That I already told you in the form of single system image. So in the single system image also our objective is same. We want to hide the internal details, right? We want to provide an abstract layer to the user because many internal details may not understood by the user or the client or the customer. That's why we want to hide the implementation details. Therefore, you can say simplicity of writing parallel program is an important metric for parallel and distributed programming paradigm. Very important, right? Writing the parallel program is very important because we are not going to show these implementation to the user because user may not be compatible, user may not aware of these systems, right? So other motivations, if you see behind these parallel and distributed programming models, are to improve the productivity of the programmer. Okay, if you write parallel program, then obviously the productivity is improved. Second one, to decrease the program's time to market. The time required in the traditional one and the time required in the parallel distributed one, if you compare, it is less. Parallel program is very less in comparison to the traditional one. So we are decreasing the program's time. Okay. So if you see the market context also, the adaptability will be more. Third one is to leverage underlying resources more efficiently. Suppose you have 100 resources. Earlier, these resources are not properly used. So if you write a parallel program, then you can easily use it. Next is to increase the system throughput. As the resources are used more efficiently, then throughput is obviously increased. Next is to support a higher level abstraction. Okay, we want to provide a higher level abstractions because many internal details may not be understood by a particular user. So now let us see what are the programming models are there. Yes. So one of the very popular model is called as our MapReduce. So MapReduce is a software framework which is supporting your parallel and distributed computing, especially whenever we are dealing with large data set. If the data set is very huge, in that case, MapReduce is an appropriate. So we have two functions here in MapReduce. First one is map function is there. Second one is we have reduce function. There is two main blocks. One is map function, another is reduce function. So here you can see in the diagram, you are giving a set of input files, right, to the map function, right? You are giving the work to the map function. Then map is one map function takes one input file. They process that thing. Then the data is transferred to your reduce function. Similarly, you have a set of reduce function. One reduce function is dealing with one thing. Then finally, they are producing the output file. So here you can say input data flows through the map and reduce function, okay, in order to get the output files. Okay, so if you see here, there is a controller. How the input is converted to output? Under the control flow. This control flow uses, or this controller manages this control flow, and it uses the MapReduce library. In the MapReduce library, already map function and reduce function is there. No need to write the code. So whenever you go for the implementation, it is more easier. Okay. So this is the complete framework. You are given with a set of input file. You have to assign to the set of map function. Map function will send the data to the reduce function, and reduce function will give the result to the output files. Okay, and entire thing is managed by a controller. So you can see here these complete internal details, map function and reduce functions. This is under the abstraction layer. Nobody is going to see these internal details. Or user will know that only there is a map function is there, reduce function is there. So that will be only shown to the user through an interface, not the entire details. So here you can use a special user interfaces that are used to assess the map and reduce resources without going to other details. Now come to the formal definition of MapReduce. So you can see here the programming. We have a map function, right? You have a reduce function, and in the main function you are calling this map and reduce function whenever required. So here we are using a specific object that is called as SPEC. Okay, and you have another function MapReduce which takes two parameters. One is SPEC, another is results. So let us see how it works. The user overrides the map and reduce function. First, invokes the provided MapReduce, that is this one, MapReduce with two parameters. One is SPEC and address of result function, and this function is available in the MapReduce library to start the flow of data. Okay, where you have separately given the map and reduce function. Okay, so whenever you are invoking this MapReduce, okay, so you have invoking the library. So this SPEC stands for your specification object. Like you have seen in the Amazon S3 also, we are calling it the object. So here, the object is first initialized inside the user program. The object is nothing but SPEC is initialized inside the user program. Then user write the code to fill it with the names of input and output files. So you have to supply the name of the input and output files where we can get the data, where you can write the data. And you also deal with some optional parameters, or we call this very frequently, that is called as optional tuning parameter. Some specific parameters you can also set. Okay, so this object, if you see, is also filled with the name of the map and reduce function to identify these user defined function to the MapReduce library. So entire thing is available in the MapReduce library. No need to write the code. You have to use the inbuilt function in order to execute your work, right? So this is the complete picture what we discussed in one class. Just I want to revisit to this class. So you are given with a set of input. So a set of input files. So one file you can give to the map functions, which we call as a map task. That is a set of map task is there. Then map task is giving to the reduce task, map to the set of reduce task. So you can see here all the map tasks are connected to the reduce task. Then finally, from the reduce task, you can get the output, or you can accumulate the things to reduce the output. So one of the typical example we have also discussed that I just want to revisit it. Suppose you have three input file. One is deer, beer, river. Second one is car, car, river. Third one is deer, car, beer. Right? So if these are the input files are there, they are given to, first you have to partition the input into a set of input files. Like each and every sentence I am taking is one file. So that is called as splitting. Or if you remember what we discussed today, that is called as partition. So once it is partitioned, let's say first one is deer, beer and river. Next is car, car, river. Next is deer, car, beer. So this partitioning is nothing but a key value pair. K1 represent the key, B1 represent the value. Then we are giving this work to the map function. A set of map functions are there. What this map function is doing, they are generating a list with two values, one key, that is K2, and value B2. In this case, it is counting how many times a word is repeated. Like deer is repeated one time, beer is repeated one time, river is repeated one time. Similarly, second case, it is saying car is repeated one time, car is repeated one time, and river is repeated one time. Third file, deer is repeated one time, car is repeated one time, and beer is repeated one time. So once this mapping is done, what you can apply? You can apply the shuffling process. What shuffling process is saying? You have to take a key, and with respect to a particular key, you have to generate a list. So here if you see the mapper, for the mapping function, all the mapping functions are connected to your shuffling. Like you can see a particular word. Okay, a particular word you can see here, it is repeated here. It is also repeated in this map function. So they can be combined with respect to the key. The key is nothing but beer, and the list is nothing but one. But it is saying one time it is repeated here, another time it is repeated here. Similarly, for car, I have taken another shuffling. So you can see car is repeated twice here. In this block, car is repeated twice. Okay. And car is repeated once here. So that we are taking. So once you do this shuffling one, what this we call the reduce function. Reduce function is accumulating this thing. So it is saying it is taking the values that are available in a list and it is combining it. So it is saying it is repeated twice, it is repeated thrice, it is repeated twice, it is repeated twice. Then in the final result, what we are doing, we are preparing a list with key 3 and value 3, which is nothing but combining the result of all the reduced functions. Okay, so this is a very important problem. Okay, so which is popularly known as your word count problem. So this problem I told you in long back to solve using MapReduce, right? So in the lab class, if you have not done, please revisit and complete this assignment. Now come to the MapReduce logical data flow. So the input data to both the map and reduce function has a particular structure. You have seen. You have a set of input file and you are taking one row and you are giving one row to each and every map function. So the key, whatever you are using here, is the line offset within the input file. So you can say first line is given to the first map function, and the map function takes the value of each and every word. You can see here as a key value and generate its value, right? So this offset within the input file and value is the content of the line, right? The value of each key is nothing but the content of the line. Like here you can see input is divided, input values we are divided into various keys. So we are calling this as a line offset and this is the line content. Then it is applied to the map function. What map function is doing? With respect to the key value, it is generating a list. You can say key 1 In the first file, key 1, key 8, key 2 is there. Or in the last file, key 8, key 5, key 1 is there. After that, you are sorting the everything, which in previous slide I mentioned as a two functions we have taken. One is splitting and is shuffling. So the similar kind of things we are doing here. We are sorting so that we can group together with respect to the keys. So once it is sorted based upon the unique keys, that is given input to the reduce function, and finally reduce function is accumulating everything in order to produce the output result. So basically in this map reduce logical data flow, you have 5 processing stages. First one is your input. Second one, you have output. Third one, you have a map function, and you have a reduce function. Another is called as a sorting and grouping. And everywhere you are maintaining a key value pair. Sometimes you are maintaining a list, or sometimes you are taking a key value pair. So here, if you see, the user-defined map function processes each input. Each input is in the form of key and value pair, and produces a number of either 0 or 1 or more. How many times it is repeated? That is nothing but intermediate key value pair. So the main goal here is to process all input, that is key value pair, to the map function in parallel. So you can see here, everything we have divided and running the things in the parallel way. On the other hand, if you see, the reduce function receives the intermediate key value pair. Reduce function, you can see here, receives the key value pair in the form of a group of intermediate values associated with one intermediate key, that is nothing but key with a set of values. You can see here, you have defined the unique keys key 1 to key 8 and their repetition, their unique values you are specified. So this process is used in the MapReduce. Okay, so you can see the data is sorted to simplify the grouping process. If you sort the data, you can easily locate how many times P1 is there, how many times P2 is there, how many times P8 is there. So the reduce function, if you see here, processes finally each key and set of value group and produces a set of key value pairs as output. One of the typical example again, I am giving you another example that is same as the word count problem. So you can see one word is here, that is most people ignore most poetry. This is one file. Another file is most people ignore most people. So you can give this file to two map function. First map function will say most is repeated once, people is repeated one, ignore is repeated one, most is repeated one, poetry is repeated one. Second file, most is repeated one, poetry is repeated one, ignore is repeated one, most is repeated again one, people is repeated one. Then we are going to form the sorting. Okay, why you are making this sorting? Because the grouping becomes easier. So once you sort this one, you can collect. Ignore is repeated one time, ignores is repeated one time. You can see here. Here ignore is there, in the second file ignores is there. Don't combine it. Most is repeated how many times? 4. So this is the list. People is repeated 2 times and poetry is repeated 2 times. Then you are giving this to a reduce function. Reduce function combine everything and says most is repeated 4 times. Okay. So this process you are going to follow in the MapReduce. So if you go for the formal notation of the MapReduce data flow, what we can say here, the map function is applied in parallel to every input, which is a key value pair, and produces a new set of intermediate key value pair as follows. So you are giving key value pair to the map function. What map function is doing? Map function generating a list with key 2 and value 2. What you have seen in the example. Similarly, MapReduce library collect all the produced intermediate key value pairs. So these are the all intermediate key value pairs you can see here. What we are doing? Key value pairs from all input key value pairs, and we are doing the sorting based upon the key value Then we are grouping the values of all occurrences of the same key. So the reduce function is applied in parallel to each group, producing the collection of values as output. So you can see we are giving key to and list of value to the value function. Finally, we are getting the list of value to as a output. So these two are the mathematical notations we are following in the mathematics.